We can start. Okay, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you again. Welcome the sorry, Mariam. Just mute. It's fine. So I would like to welcome Dawood, Mele, so Dr. Hashil, for their time and effort and involvement and willingness, of course, to support our students in these really difficult times. You already know Dr. Hashil. Dr. Hashil is an expert in research methodology. He's a lecturer and researcher at Sultan University in Oman, and he has kindly offered his time and effort over the past few months. Well, it's almost a year now. He's been volunteering with us in the English department at Al-Saadi University, teaching our students, dedicating his time and effort honestly to help our students during this difficult time. So today, Dr. Hashil is with us again in this series of webinars. And today he will be talking about types of research and research purpose, which I assume, and I'm sure there's going to be an informative and engaging session, which is also useful for our students, not only for ongoing effort and helping them write contributions for the journal, but also for future career and future academic journeys. This is something that you will need, a skill that you will need for your career as you go as an academic, as a scholar, as a student, as a writer. So you will need these skills. I'm sure this session will contribute to your understanding in the field. Thank you so much again, Dr. Hashil, and over to you.
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Try to go full screen. Okay, just Dr. Ahmed, just I'll be referring to you from now, every now and then to check things like technical things and show. Is the slides in full screen now?
Yeah, all good, full screen.
Okay, is it moving? Can you also confirm they're moving?
Yes, they are moving.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm really privileged to be with you today to discuss research. Our previous session was an introduction to research and reflective thinking. And this is the second webinar in a series of webinars that aims at equipping our dear students and learners in Gaza in particular, and everyone else who is joining us with the basic research skills which will help them proceed with their studies, either at the undergraduates or later, inshallah, at the graduate and postgraduate levels. Before we get into today's session, I thought it would be useful to revisit the session that we had 2 weeks back on reflective thinking and research. So this is a quick revision for those who missed it, or for those who maybe did not have the chance to join us for one reason or another. Though this is something from the previous session. If we look back to what we talked about last time, this is a quick summary of what we said about reflective thinking. So basically, reflective thinking is something that we can describe as a process of carefully thinking about our actions, experiences, and the decisions to learn from them. So reflective thinking, as we said last time, it's different from our everyday thinking. It is much deeper. It involves careful thinking about our actions and about our decisions. And we do this careful thinking about our actions and about our decisions, and also about our understanding. We rethink our understanding for the purpose of learning from them. This is a very important element in reflection. learning is important. The learning is always an important element in reflection. People reflect because they want to improve things, and we improve things in the future by learning from today's experiences. All right, so that's what reflective thinking. It's different from our everyday quick thinking, can be superficial, but this is careful and also deliberate. We do it on purpose, and also it involves learning from our actions and for the purpose of improving our decisions and our understanding. The second point here, it involves looking back, evaluating what happened, and then considering how things could be done differently or better next time. So that's the purpose of this kind of thinking. And it's important. Everyone needs this kind of reflective thinking. And as we said also last time, that reflective thinking will help you also develop critical thinking, which is also important in research. Reflective thinking here, the third point, reflective thinking helps us improve understanding and decisions, as we said. Reflective thinking is not our everyday thinking. It's not superficial and it's not superficial description. So when we ask you, for example, to write a reflective paper, it's not mainly descriptive. So you're not describing what happens, but you are reflecting on the actions. You see what I mean? So the difference between descriptive writing and reflective writing is that reflective writing always involves thinking about what happened and then trying to analyze what happened and what we can learn from this, okay? How it contributes to our understanding. All right, but description will you will be telling us what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel. It's just description without going into much detail. So that's the difference between reflective thinking and descriptive thinking or writing. Descriptive writing, if you describe something going on, um, I'm not sure there's any journals that can publish this, but usually journals will require elements of reflection and synthesis in the paper. Okay, we're gonna see examples later. Okay, but if it's mainly descriptive writing, you can keep it as journals. Okay, for personal journals, yeah. But to make it more publishable, then it has to include this reflection element of reflection. Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to reflective writing now, which is a documentation of our lived experiences and emotions. So it's not, we are not only describing our lived experiences and emotions, but we are also telling the readers why we are having this kind of experience. Why are we feeling this way and not the other way? And what are we learning from this? Okay, so that's the reflective writing. It always involves, learning from the actions. Research and reflection go hand in hand. You cannot do research without reflection. Okay, they always, I mean, the researchers are always reflective. We reflect on our experiences. We reflect on our context. We look around in our context and then we see how things are going. What are the gaps? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And then we decide to do research. So we pick up research based on our reflection, on our critical thinking as well. Later on, there's going to be a session on how you choose research titles or topics for your research. We're going to revisit this point in particular later on. Okay, so being reflective helps us also conduct better research because if you want to improve the quality of your research, then you need to be reflective and critical at the same time. Both reflective thinking and reflective writing are skills that grow with practice. The more you do it, the more you improve. And of course, when you publish your reflective thoughts, this is one way to develop them by like trying to write them down and publish them. So this is basically the summary of last time's session we had a couple of weeks ago. And we also want to remind you of the difference between reflective thinking and everyday thinking. Everyday thinking is like when you say, for example, I didn't do well on the test. My English is just not good enough. I didn't get a very good mark, not that competitive mark last time because well I just think that my English is not very good. Okay, and then you just leave it and then you carry on. This is like everyday thinking, okay? But if you want to like engage in a reflective thinking, then you would say something like, well, I didn't do well because you start to find reasons and analyze the scenarios. What happened? Why didn't you get that mark that you wanted? So I didn't review vocabulary maybe regularly. I will need to create a studies schedule, use flashcards, for example. So you'll be thinking of alternatives. You will be thinking of how you could improve in the future. Okay, so the improvement element is there in the reflective thinking. As you can see, it's not just thinking about what happened and then leaving it, but also trying to find out the reasons, okay, the culprits, what happened, the reasons for that result, and how you can improve in the future. This is essential. So that's what distinguishes reflective writing from everyday writing. All right. How can we use reflection and research? Again, this is from last week or last session. Reflection on you reflect on your context and see what's working and not working well. So you engage in a reflection. Okay, you look around in your context. You think about your context, what's working, what's not working. Okay, and then research ideas would then emerge from this kind of thinking, as a result of this kind of thinking. And then you ask yourself, why this topic? Okay, how to research it. So in terms of methodology, how to collect data, and what are the challenges, what are the possibilities, and so on. So after you have reflected on your context, you ask yourself, why this topic, how to research it, what are the challenges. So you start thinking about methodologies, how to go about conducting your research. And then keeping reflective journals or voice notes are essential as well to help you conduct your research. And also you revisit your assumption based on the findings. So we do research and then we engage in reflective thinking and then we get data, we get the results. Okay, that's not the end of the day. We still need to rethink our assumptions based on the findings. Okay, so we got new findings now. Now, the findings should then be the basis for improvement, the basis for changing our future actions. All right. So we revisit our assumptions, our understanding, and then of course, finally, we improve practice based on our revisiting of this assumption based on the findings of our research. Okay, so this is like a reflection in action. How can we put reflection in action? By thinking this way. You reflect on your context, you ask yourself questions, you choose a topic, you research it, you gather findings, the results, revisit your thinking, revisit your assumptions and actions or practices, and then you end up improving the way you do it. Okay, in teaching, for example, this is so essential. So teachers teach for a semester, let's say, or half a semester, and then engage in a systematic reflection. What have we done? How are students learning? With what results? What can I do next time to improve their learning, and so on. So we conduct research. That's what we call it, classroom-based research or action research, okay, or practitioner research. So that's kind of thinking. So this is reflection in action. Okay, so far we have talked about reflection and reflective writing. I wonder if there are any questions before we proceed to the next our today's session on types of research and research papers. I would welcome any questions if there are any. Please feel free to ask before we move on to today's session. This is like a quick reflection, revision of the session we had last time. Are there any particular questions from students or anyone else before we proceed? So is reflection clear now? What is reflection? Reflective thinking? And how we can use reflective thinking in research. I hope try to simplify things and make things easy for our students to grasp. Students can either unmute their mics and ask questions straight away, or they can use the chat box. Thank you, Shuruk. It's clear. No more questions. Dr. Ahmed, are there any questions in the chat box?
No, not really, but Yara has unmuted. Yara, do you have any question? Because you unmuted your microphone, Yara. Do you have any question? Oh, I don't think so. No, you
Okay.
can proceed, Dr. Hashil.
All right. Okay, so let's then proceed with our today's session on types of research. Okay, and I've got this, let's begin with the goals. We'll try in this session to understand the different types and classifications of research. That's number one. We will then also try to understand the different types of research papers and make the connection between types of research and types of research papers. We also want to learn how we can decide which type of research best suits our goals and purposes, and then also have a couple of papers to discuss, okay, at the end of the session. All right, some kind of warm-up questions. I've got 4 questions here for you to think about. The first question is, why do you think there are different types of research? Okay, just a simple question. Why do you think there are different types of research? Any of our students could share their thoughts, either in voice or in text. Any idea, any reason why you think there are different types of research? It depends on the title. Shuruq, yeah, thank you, Shuruq. Yeah, it depends on the title. Do you want to say it depends on the topic? Yes, okay, because there are different types of knowledge. Yes. Purpose of the study, exactly. Okay. Any more ideas? Different types of topics. Yes, of course. We have different types of areas to investigate. So our topics are different, and that's why our research is different. Okay. What else? The fields. Okay. Thank you. Fields are different. Areas of investigation are different. Topics are different. There's something else as well. Each type serves a specific purpose. Okay, exactly. Thank you. Something else? Purposes. Yeah, we have different purposes. Yeah, we do research for different reasons, of course. Okay. What else? This is the point I was waiting for. Methods. Yes, okay. My topic of expertise and interest. Methodology. Yes, okay. Methods and data collection, of course, are different. That's why we have different types of research, because we have different methodologies. We have different research designs. Okay, something else. Okay, thank you. Was it Dana? Yeah. Uh, Several perspectives. Yes, it includes several perspectives. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Yahya, Dr. Yahya. Thank you. And okay, so thank you for your contribution. Yeah, so we have different types of research because we have different topics, we have different methodologies, and we do them for different reasons, and that's why they are different, of course. Okay, let's move on. Just to make good use of the time. Let's proceed to the question number 2. What can knowledge? How can knowing the different types of research be helpful or can help us? How do you think knowing this different types of research can be helpful? Why do we need to know these different types? Okay, I want you all to engage in this kind of reflective questions, critical questions. Okay, so for better engagement and better learning. So we got out of this session with um, okay. So thanks for contribution. So how can, because they help us determine the research questions, objectives. Okay, knowing the different types of research can help us choose the right method. Excellent. Okay, sure. Okay, what else? All right. So I just wanted to see the reason why we discuss the different types of research. So okay, he's so Dana is also say, she said it makes it easy for you to search easily, okay, for the topics you want to know about. All right. It helps us so it helps you choose and research the topic. Okay. So knowing the research, the types of research help us choose, okay, help us design them in a better way, okay, and also um, sana or sana, okay, improve our ability to analyze information and solve problems. Okay, knowing them help us decide which procedures to follow. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yes, of course, very very helpful, of course. So we discussed so far. We discussed why there are different types, and then how knowing or learning about these different types can help us in our research. Okay, let's move on to this question here, with the blue logo. The third question: why are there different types of research papers? Now, turning to research papers. So we discussed the different types of research. Now, different types of research papers. Of course, the research papers are not the same. Why do you think there are different types of research papers? Any ideas? Different types of research papers. See, let's see. We got okay, because knowing them help us decide which procedures we should follow. Okay, this is from the previous question. All right. So the question here is, why do you think there are different types of research papers? Okay. Shuruk, thank you. Because we have different purposes and audiences. Great, of course. We have different audiences. That's why we write different research papers to satisfy the needs of different purpose audiences, of course. We also write them because we have different purposes. Thank you. Yasmin, to deal with multi-objects, okay? You mean different topics, okay, or subjects? Okay, because each type of research informs a unique purpose. Okay. And okay, some argue a point. Yeah. Okay. So
Excuse me, Dr. Hashil.
yes, go
Uh,
ahead.
can I ask what exactly is research papers? Like, what's the difference between research paper phrase and what's the research papers phrase and research phrase?
When we talk about research, we're talking about research itself. Okay, the process of collecting and analyzing data. That's the research. Okay, but when you write your research down for in a paper and then format it according to the requirements of a journal and then publish it, then that becomes a research paper. You see what I mean? And so the research, we're talking about the process of collecting and analyzing data. That's research. Okay, the paper is the write-up of the research, and we have different types of research papers depending on the purpose of each paper. We're gonna see examples later. Okay, so argumentative papers, position paper, theoretical paper, field-based paper, and so on. Okay, we'll talk more about those. Is that clear? Okay, thanks for your question. All right, so basically we have different types of research papers because the research papers are written for different purposes. Okay, and they are also based on different types of data. Qualitative research paper, this is quantitative research paper, this is mixed method research paper. You see what I mean? So we have different types of paper depending on the topic, the type of data, or the type of design. Okay, we're gonna see all of this later, but these are just the warm-up questions. Okay, so we talked about having different types of research because we have different topics, different purposes, and different format and designs and methodologies. That's why we have different types of research. We have different types of papers because each paper follows a certain format, certain methodologies, or it is written to achieve a particular purpose. Okay, it's if the purpose of the paper to analyze, then that's analytical paper. If it's the purpose of the paper is to present an argument, then it's an argumentative paper, and so on. So we have different types of research papers depending on the purpose, depending on the type of data the paper deals with. I hope this is clear. Okay, trying to simplify things for you guys. Okay, and the last question here: what skills are required for each type? Again, not necessarily we answer the question, but we have it okay in our mind throughout this session. Okay, what are the skills required for each type of paper or research type? Okay, let's proceed then with these general research types and designs. Let's take the first category, the first parameter, the first criteria, if you like, okay? What you see on the top of the slide in bold face is the criteria. So in terms of subject matter, we can classify research into three categories, okay? According to the subject matter. We have natural sciences research. In Arabic, it's the العلوم الطبيعية, البحوث في العلوم الطبيعية, natural sciences research, which includes examples like physics, chemistry, and so on. So these are natural sciences, العلوم الطبيعية, okay? We also have humanities and also social sciences research. So humanities research, we'll be looking at, for example, law is an example of humanities research. Economics is also humanities. Social sciences will be education, will be arts, and so on. So things that to do directly relate to people. Or you see what I mean? So we have those types of research, and the illustration here represent the natural sciences, and the people and the connection here, social networking here, as you can see, refers to this humanities and social research. Okay, so generally speaking, when we talk about the subject matter, then we have this classification: natural sciences research, humanities, and social sciences. Okay, some people will put humanities and social sciences together under one category, but I think they are different. All right, I hope this is clear. So the first one, the first category. If we look at the second category in terms of the nature of research, here we have three types: theoretical, applied, and empirical. Okay, let's take them one after another. Okay, theoretical research, these are the kind of research that looks based on theories. So they look at the theories and then they try to develop new theories or test new or already existing theories. So it's the theoretical. They may not be based on empirical work, like there will be like no data collection, but they will be doing meta-analysis or secondary data in order, or existing data in order to develop new theories or to test theories and so on. So these are theoretical, okay? And the second part is also applied research. This kind of applied research that are based on problems. So we do this research in order to solve a problems. Okay, so applied research and different, and it's a quite different from the theoretical based of kind of research when the focus is on theories. Okay, الأبحاث النظرية in Arabic. Applied البحوث التطبيقية. So they have applications. Okay, they result in some kind of framework, or they produce kind of solutions to the problems and so on. So these are applied kind of research when usually they have to do with people's everyday life. You see what I mean? Okay, so we're not just only dealing with theories, but we also try to solve real life problems. Those are applied research, البحوث التطبيقية in Arabic. And the third type is empirical research, empirical that involves data collection. Okay, so you go out to the field, start collect data. Either you collect data in a lab, or you do experiments, or you collect data from people if you are doing humanities kind of research, okay, or social sciences. So empirical research always involves data collection, okay? Keep this in mind. Theoretical, not necessarily collecting fresh data. You can do theoretical research by revisiting existing theories. okay? Or you synthesize findings from previous research in order to develop a new theory and so on, or produce theories and so on. And some people said, okay, why do we need theoretical research? They are not practical. They are not applied research. We still need them because we need theories, because the theories help us understand phenomena. We need the theory in order to explain some kind of phenomena that's going on around us. Okay, so we need social theories, for example. There are economic theory, political theories, and so on. Of course, natural research theories as well. Okay, like Newton theories and so on. So we have those three types of research according to the nature of research. All right. Am I going too fast for you? Let's try to make sure that I'm not too fast, but again, not too slow. Okay. Let's move on to the scope now. Based on the scope of the research, we have two types. We have surveys and case studies. Okay, and you have that in Arabic. Okay, I just thought that it might help you also have them in Arabic. So البحوث الاستطلاعية والمسوحات, surveys, or دراسات الحالة, which is the case studies. All right. The difference between the surveys and the case studies is that the surveys usually involves large number of people. The sample would be huge, like 50, 100, 200, 300, and so on. So you got surveys to as many as you can, so you can then make generalizations and understand the overall ideas, perceptions, attitudes, and so on, predispositions, and so on. Case studies will take smaller sample, and the focus will be on a particular case. The case can be a person, can be a group of people, can be a situation, can be a place, or can be a time. Okay, you know, time can be a case. A person can be a case. A group of people can be a case. Location can be a case. Okay, and you can take one case or multiple cases. All right. So in terms of scope, surveys are much larger, broader, and larger samples, but the case studies usually focused and smaller samples. Got it? Okay. So that's in terms of scope. Okay, let's look at the type of data. Again, we have three types of research in terms of data type. We have quantitative. I'm sure you are, maybe most of you are familiar with this. Quantitative, qualitative, and the mixed method. And you have them in Arabic as well. بحوث الكمية, البحوث النوعية, والبحوث المختلطة, أو البحوث المزجية. Okay, so in terms of type of data we collect, then we can divide research based on the type of data. Okay, if you are sending out a questionnaire, you get numbers, percentages, and you do all the statistics, then descriptive and inferential statistics, then you are doing quantitative research. Because the data you collect is basically numbers. All right. On the other hand, the qualitative, you are not concerned with numbers here, but you are concerned with people's ideas, thoughts, emotions, and so on. Those are qualitative research. And if you combine numbers and words, so you collect data through surveys or questionnaires, or if you have interviews for the qualitative research, if you could put the interviews and questionnaires together in one research, then you end up having mixed method research. But you must do this mixing, the integration of both the quantity and quality together in order to have mixed method research. Many people do mixed method research, but when I look at the research, they are not really mixed method because they fail to integrate quantitative and qualitative data together. And we have different levels of integration. Okay, we can talk more about them later when we have a session on research methods. You can integrate them at in the title level, the research questions level, the objective level, at the design level, at the data analysis level, and the data interpretation level as well. There are different types, levels of integration in mixed method research. So this is also another type of research if we take the data type into consideration. I hope this is clear. I don't want to go too fast to help you digest the information. So if you want to do quantitative research, then you send out questionnaire and collect the data, and then you will be working out the percentages and medium averages. So you do this descriptive and inferential statistics. That's quantitative. Okay. If you want to do observations or interviews, then that's qualitative research. And when you combine both, then that's mixed method research. All right. So this is one way to classify and to look at research. Okay, let's look at the sample. Again, we can differentiate between research based on the sample type. The sample type, then we have بحوث طولية, longitudinal kind of research, and the opposite will be the cross-sectional. The other type will be the cross-sectional. So we either have longitudinal kind of research or cross-sectional. Now, what's the difference? Okay, let's take, for example, final year students. And if you want to study final year students, then that is cross-sectional. So you will take, for example, if you are looking at, for example, vocabulary development at the university of the students at the university. So you will take, let's say, 5 students from year 1, and then year 2, year 3, and then year 4. And you will be looking at the language development in those 4 groups of students. So you will be like looking at the language development, how vocabulary, for example, develops with the students as they proceed into their educational ladder. See what I mean? From year 1 to year 4. So you will be doing it, let's say, for over a period of 4 months or 5 months. Okay, so you will be studying like a sample, a group of students from year 1. You take a sample from year 2, a sample from year 3, and a sample from year 4. And you will be looking at the language development or vocabulary development on those 4 groups. Okay, and then you do your research. This is cross-sectional. All right, بحوث مقطعية. But if you want to do the longitudinal, that takes longer time, of course, but you will be doing like taking the same sample. You will be following the same group of students in year 1, and then you study them again in year 2, and then you study them again in year 3, and then year 4, the same group of students. So that will be longitudinal. This will take 4 years. If you have time and funding to do that kind of research, then that is longitudinal kind of research. So according to the sample type or sample size, then we have longitudinal and cross-sectional. All right. This is one way of research. Okay. One type of research. Let's look at the theory. Of course, research is always include theories. A place of theory or the role of theory in research can also help us also with the classification. We have deductive and inductive. Okay, and in the course, for those of you who did the course, the research methods course with me, we touched upon this issue. We can look at the role and place of theory in our research. Are we starting with a theory and then we are testing it, or are we collecting data and developing theory at the end? You see, that's the difference. If we have a theory to begin with, if we start our research with an already existing theory, and then we collect data in order to see whether this theory will stand or otherwise, then that is deductive kind of research. Okay? Because the purpose is to test that theory. But sometimes we don't really begin with a theory. We want to collect data and then develop a new theory and develop a new understanding or develop a new framework. That is inductive, الاستقراء. You see what I mean? So the difference between the deductive and deductive is that the first one, we begin with a theory, so the theory comes at the end, and the purpose is to test that theory. Okay? The second type, the inductive, is when we collect data and then we develop theory at the end. So the theory comes at the end. So that's why we call it theory development for the second one, induction. All right, we use the inductive reasoning. That is theory development. But the first one, when you begin with a theory and test it, that's what we call it the research that is deductive, which is theory testing. So theory testing in the first one, deduction, and theory development for the second one, induction. All right. I hope I'm not complicating you further, but this is the one way to look at classifications of research. Okay. So those are the types of research, and in the warm-up questions we say why we need to understand the types of research, because they are done for different reasons, different methodologies, different samples, different purposes, and so on. That's why we have different types of research. Now, types of research papers. Let's look at the research papers, academic writing and research. This is the first type of paper you can write, called analytical research paper. This is the purpose, is to analyze and interpret different viewpoints on a topic. Analytical research paper. Okay. ورقة بحثية ورقة بحثية تحليلية, if you like. Okay. That is, the purpose is to analyze and interpret different viewpoints. All right. And of course, usually it's objective. It's usually requires synthesis of sources. An example is analyzing various theories of second language acquisition. If you look at, like, if you are language students, most of the students taking the course with me are English language specialists. So second language acquisition theory will be something like familiar to them. So if you are analyzing various theories of second language acquisition and you analyze them, then that is analytical research paper. So you can write a paper and you call it analytical paper if the purpose is to analyze and interpret different viewpoints on a topic. Okay. Let's look at this another type. Another type of research paper will be the argumentative kind of paper. We call it also position paper, because here you have an argument and you try to persuade your audience. That's why it's called persuasive. All right. The purpose is to convince readers of a particular viewpoint, and they present evidence and counter opposing arguments. So you present the already existing arguments, and then you would try to find out what's your own argument and how you can refute those arguments. Okay, and you convince the reader that your argument is stronger. Okay, so because, of course, by presenting evidence. Example, arguing that pop culture or popular culture enhances vocabulary learning in EFL context. For example, we did this kind of research together with another master student. We looked at how popular culture can enhance vocabulary in Oman. And we're trying to sending it to a journal soon, inshallah, for publications. So this is kind of an argumentative research. Okay. Empirical kind of paper. You can do empirical research paper, which is based on data collection. Okay, this is different from a theoretical paper, because theoretical paper, you don't really do research, you don't do data collection. But here, if you engage in a data collection, then that is kind of empirical. So an empirical research paper is a paper that presents original research findings based on data collection. And it includes methodology, data analysis, data discussions, and of course, results as well. So you discuss the results, you have methodology section, and findings and discussions and the recommendations as well. Example will be a case study exploring vocabulary learning through English popular culture. Again, that example. This is empirical research because it involves data collection. So you either do quantitative or qualitative or mixed method research, which involve data collection. It will also include, of course, methodology, data analysis, discussion, recommendations, and so on. Okay, this is an empirical research paper. You can also do review paper, and we have different types of review papers. All right. The purpose here is to summarize and critically evaluate existing research. Okay, and you can do narrative review, systematic review, or meta-analysis. So here, let me tell you a little bit about the systematic review. So systematic review, you look at, for example, you take vocabulary learning, for example, okay, or reading, for example. Try to get you an example from our specialization, which is English language teaching. Okay, so you look at all the papers that have been produced from 2010 to down to 2015. Okay, from 2010, for example, we take this framework of 10 years, 2010 to 2020, or 2015 to 2025, that 10 years. So you decide on the time frame. So you will include papers that were published from 2015 down to 2025, okay, this year. So we have 10 years span. And you will include only the papers that have been produced, for example, quantitatively, or qualitatively or mixed method. So you decide on a specific criteria for inclusion and exclusion. You see what I mean? So you can decide on the papers that have been produced at this particular time, in this particular, for example, group of journals, Q1 only. You will take only Q1 journals, for example, okay, which is the top-notch papers, journals. So you decide on what kind of criteria you want to use for this review. Okay, once you have all those papers, then you start analyzing them. This is systematic review. And you, of course, synthesize data, you synthesize findings, you come up with your own findings and conclusions at the end. This is a review paper. All right, so you're not actually going down to the field and collecting data. You're looking at the papers that has already been published, but you decide what kind of papers you will use for your review in terms of time, methodology, place, for example, publication, whatever, and then you do your analysis and you come up with your own findings. Okay, that's one thing you could do. All right, especially if you have if you have it really hard to get down in the field and then collect your own data. So you can use already published research, and this is you can call it systematic review. Okay. Here is also, we can do another type of papers where the papers are based on experiments or intervention. Okay, so here you would like to do like quantitative kind of research, for example, with test hypotheses under controlled conditions. Okay, and the key feature of these kind of papers is when the focus will be on variables, controls, and replicability of the research. So you have kind of variables. The focus will be on variables. Okay, in Arabic we're talking about متغيرات الدراسة. Okay, focus on variables. And then, for example, gender is a variable. For example, place of your where you live is a variable. Age is a variable. Qualification is a variable, and so on. So these are kind of variables where you look at different variables and how those variables interact and affect one another. Okay, dependent variables, independent variables, and so on. Look at the example, testing the effect of movie subtitles on vocabulary retention. Okay, you watch movies with subtitles and you watch other movies without subtitles, and then you see which type of movies with the subtitles or without subtitles that help students retain vocabulary longer and more effectively. Okay, that's kind of experimental. يعني بحوث اللي هي فيها نوع من الاختبارات. Okay, and we have quasi experimental and experimental kind of research. All right, this is very common also in education. Theoretical paper, we talked about this earlier. It's to develop or critique theoretical framework. And here will be like you have conceptual exploration without actually collecting new data. This is the theoretical paper. We talked about it earlier. Example will be proposing learner autonomy. This is my own paper. I wrote a paper, theoretical paper, on proposing learner autonomy as a framework to enhance language learning in Oman. So this is a theoretical paper. I didn't collect data on this. I synthesized information from already existing research on learner autonomy, and I proposed this framework. I said, based on what has been published already on learner autonomy, I think learner autonomy as a framework can help us improve language learning in Oman. So you develop your argument and support it with research findings. You are not going down to collect data from the schools or universities. You are not conducting interviews or giving out questionnaires to people. No, this is like a theoretical paper that is based on, or we call it also a position paper, that is called based on existing research. Okay, so that's ورقة نظرية يعني. Okay, بحث نظري, theoretical paper. All right. I think this is the last one. Case study kind of research, when the purpose is to focus on exploring a single subject or a single setting or a single group of people. This is a case study. Usually Usually the sample is quite small. The key feature of this kind of paper is context rich. It's qualitative usually and focus on a specific instance. An example will be this study we have done together with I told you about with master students. It's a case study of EFL learners using popular culture in Oman. Okay, that is an example of a case study. Okay, I can share it with you if you like. Oh, one more methodological paper when the focus is on methodologies here. Okay, you want to refine or introduce research tools or techniques, and the focus will be, of course, on methodology rather than on the findings. For example, preparing or proposing a new rubrics for analyzing learner discussions. So teachers maybe will be engaged on this kind of methodology, for example, in order to develop like a new methods of data collection and new methods of research. So the focus will be on methodology rather than on the findings. So this is called methodological paper. Okay, and I think I have a paper long time ago when I did my data collection for my PhD. I came up with a new method of data collection, and I call it the L1 group reflective discussions. The group reflective discussions or reflective group discussions. That's the kind of a new methodological. And if I then try to write a paper on describing this methodology and then publishing it, then that would be a methodological paper because the focus is on methodology. Okay, here is a tip after going over all different types of research papers. Then how can we choose? Of course, we choose based on our objectives and based on our questions. Okay, this is very important things to keep in mind, that we choose based on the research questions and based on our objectives. Okay, let me give you an example. If I want to find out, for example, okay, I'll give you an example from your own context in Gaza. If I want, for example, to find out how many people in Gaza hold a degree, okay, who can teach university students in this particular difficult time. So in this case, what we're gonna do is we want to find out about a number, right? We want to find out how many people hold a degree in, let's say, English language teaching. Okay, and of course, we can go to universities or Ministry of Higher Education through their records. I'm sure they may have this. But if we want to send out a questionnaire, a survey, okay, a quick survey, then that would be a quantitative paper because the purpose here is finding out how many. We want to find out how many people hold degrees. Okay, so that's my goal. Then I will send out a questionnaire. Okay, send it by social media, through emails, whatever, or through university, whatever. But my purpose here is a number. So that would be quantitative paper. You see what I mean? If I want not just the number, but also I want their perspectives on the best ways in these current situations to teach English, for example. What are their perspectives on the methodology that will fit, or the teaching method that will fit the current situations? In this case, I will then I'm not only interested in numbers, but also interested in also finding out about their perceptions and their perspectives. In this case, I need to interact with them directly. So perhaps we conduct interviews online because it's difficult now to meet face to face. You see what I mean? So I'm not interested in only the number, but also in what they think is the best way to teach, given the current situation. So in this case, I will go for qualitative research. And then, of course, I will produce qualitative paper. Can you see how the types of research and the type of paper get into play? So they intertwine, they interact, and we cannot separate them. Based on the purpose, I will choose the research design, and of course, I will write my research paper based on the data that I have, based on the research design. So I will give a label to your paper based on the topic, based on the purpose, based on the type of data, and based on the type of design. Okay, we have empirical paper because it's empirical. Okay, it involves data collection. It's a theoretical paper because it's looks at the theories and synthesizing results from existing research papers. You see what I mean? So so depending on the kind of purpose you have, depending on the research questions that you can and the objectives, we can then decide on what kind of research and what kind of paper. All right. So before we look at these two types of research samples, I just want to pause for a while and see if you have any questions after going over all these different types of research papers. Let's see if you have any particular questions before we introduce the different types of research papers. I have two examples for it. Are there any questions? Dr. Ahmed, we still have some students, right here?
Yeah, we do. If you have any questions, guys, please feel free to send either in the chat or unmute your microphone. Shahid has one question. Shahid, you can write it in the chat or you can unmute and ask it, whatever you feel comfortable. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I wanted to make a research about war. It's not a research. I wanted to write an essay about war and peace. It's titled War and Peace. Now,
Okay.
I wanted to, yes. If I wanted to use both, I wanted to use both quantitative and qualitative types of data.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just a moment.
Yes. Okay. So what's your purpose?
Yes, I'm
What is
going
the- what
to
is- yeah.
write in this essay. I'm going to write about the war in general in all world, but in specific in Gaza. What does it mean, war in Gaza? What does war mean in Gaza? It is mixed methods, right? If we use quantitative and qualitative, and through this essay, I'm going to write about my experience and share our stories and our feelings through it.
Okay. Is it
It's
your own feelings and story, or is it someone else?
both of them, because we here in Gaza we all share the same feelings and the same stories.
Yes. Almost the same. I wouldn't say the same, almost the same. People have their own different stories. So if you are writing about yourself, then that would be sort of, narrative kind of research, because or self biography kind of research. This will be classified under narrative research. If you are telling a story, narrative kind of research or a narrative paper, we also mentioned that in types of papers. Narrative papers will be the paper that reports on personal story, if either one person or a group of people. Okay, so that's kind of narrative research. And the narrative paper will be the paper that reports on that kind of research. You see what I mean? So you will be telling the story of others. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes, telling the story of either yourself or someone else. Okay, that's the narrative
Yes.
research.
But you said
Okay.
in a qualitative data type, we talk about personal people's emotions, perceptions, right?
Exactly. So you better go for qualitative design.
Yeah.
Qualitative design. Yeah. And actually, the narrative research, narrative is one design of qualitative research, We talk more about later when we talk in a session, another session on research methods. We will be talking about the 6 different designs of qualitative research. There are 6 different designs that come under qualitative research. One of them is narrative research. It's purely qualitative because it involves talking to people, allowing people to narrate their own stories and emotions and experiences. This is purely qualitative.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thanks, Shahid. And we've got another question from Bisan in the chat. Bisan asks if you, she's of course thanking you for such an informative session. And she asks if it is possible to recommend any specific academic journals that would serve as good examples of best practices.
Yes, there are so many different times. Thanks, Bisan. There's a huge spectrum of research journals, depending on the focus of your research, depending on the topic, and also depending on the scope of your research. You can decide on which journal to publish or to contact after you have clear idea of your own paper. So if you have a specific paper, if you want to do narrative paper, empirical paper, theoretical paper, methodological paper, depending on the type of paper, then you'll then start contacting the journals based on 2 things. And the topic of the research and also the scope of the journal, based on the scope of the journal. For example, if you are doing writing a paper on teaching methods, for example, or teaching and learning languages, there are specific journals. For example, the second language acquisition theory journal, or TESOL quarterly, or also English as a second language ESL journal, for example. So there are journals that accept only research papers on second language acquisition, okay, or vocabulary, or learner voice in language learning, and so on. There are so many different types of journals, depending on the topic, the focus, and the scope of your paper. Okay, we cannot suggest like go for this paper or that paper, because we still need to find out your own paper. Okay, depending on the paper, okay, we cannot suggest any journal. Okay, it's just really hard to do that. We need to find out the focus of your journal, of your paper first, before we can suggest a journal. All right, because journals have specific topics and specific focus and scope. All right, yes, Shuro, you raised your hand.
Well, if you have a question, please unmute or send your question. Dana is raising her hand as well. Dana, if you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah, has a question reminded me of a question I always wanted to ask. Like I want to write about one topic, like one specific topic. I want to write about women in war, especially in Gaza during this time. But I feel like, because I feel that it's the hidden suffer here in Gaza, women suffer. But I feel that the topic is so wide and it's so huge for me to start writing about it. Like I don't know how to start about it. So like I wanted to ask Dr. Hashil and maybe George about it to maybe lead me with the methods and with the ways to start writing about it, and for the journal. This was my question.
Thank you. I will also give George the opportunity to also comment on this, but I would advise you to reduce it down to a specific topic. The more specific your topic is, the easier it becomes when you start doing it. We start usually, generally, we start thinking broad terms, but we need to bring it down to a specific point, specific objective, and then start from there. So you take it from there, from being specific. Instead of saying I want to write about women in Gaza, or women suffering in Gaza, try to focus on a specific aspect. Would it be mothers with children, for example? mothers who have disabled children, for example, mothers who are in a specific area, mothers or women, for example, who are, for example, divorced, so try to bring it down to a specific topic, and focus on a particular group, so that makes it easy for you then to handle it. Once you have this specific goal, then, or group of people, then it will be, then you choose whether to do it quantitatively or qualitatively. And usually we go for qualitative research when the matter has to do with emotions and feelings and experiences. You cannot give them like a questionnaire where they tick boxes, okay, agree or disagree. Okay, that's not very helpful. Okay, you would need to listen to them and to get their lived experiences and emotions and feelings. You see what I mean? In that case, you will need, so it will be qualitative research. It will be empirical, of course. Okay, and then, but make sure you have a specific point and a specific objectives. Okay, it's over to you, George, if you want to focus, comment on this.
Thank you, Dr. Hashil. I would agree completely with your advice. I think the challenge is sometimes in knowing how to refine what your idea is, especially when it is such a broad topic. So I think my advice would be to ask yourself, why do I want to study this topic? What is it about this topic that's made me want to choose it? That I think can be helpful to guide you as you refine the specific focus. In terms of where to begin, I think if I was to start writing or want to start writing and to generate ideas, I would probably approach it creatively. I would probably approach it thinking about how I can just set my ideas down on the page. That can sometimes be helpful. I think for me, thinking and writing tend to happen at the same time. So depends on you, I think, Dana, and how you feel about developing your own ideas, what your process is. But my recommendation is free writing, something like that, where you can let yourself follow your idea and see what it is for you that's important about that topic. And then let that inform, like Dr. Hashil said, the process of refining specifically what you'd like to think about. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I also receive similar questions from my students. They've got idea, but they don't know how to begin. And I think the problem lies in the fact that they are they're broad. The topic is just so broad in their mind. They just have to narrow it down and try to ask themselves, what I want to try to find out. What is it that I want to focus on? Once you ask yourself this kind of questions, then you should be able then to find a specific focus. All right.
Thank
Any
you,
other?
Dr. Hashil, and thanks, George. There's one question by Bisan, and she says, are these different research approaches interconnected? I assume she refers to qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods.
Yeah, either if he refers to the research designs or the research papers, yes, they are. We can't separate them, because sometimes when we have, for example, empirical paper, okay, or empirical research, this may be a qualitative paper or quantitative or mixed method, because they involve data collection. Any paper that involves data collection, then it's already empirical. Okay, and then we call them empirical because we want to differentiate between this group of research or papers and the non-empirical, where we are not actually collecting data. We write papers based on already existing results or findings, like review papers, for example. All right. So if you do review papers, you are not actually collecting fresh data. You are using the already existing results and findings from other papers. You synthesize these findings and you develop your own argument. So they are interrelated, yes.
Yeah, sounds good. Now there's a comment, Dr. Hashil, and I think this is really interesting and it's relevant, and we can probably tweak it and make it a question on behalf of of the person who asked or commented. Um, Now, given the circumstances in Gaza, students may believe that I can't do research because I can't go to the field. I cannot go and collect that. I can't go interview people. It's tricky. The internet is impeding my work. It's making it difficult. What is your suggestion and advice for students who would like to continue and do research, even during these difficult times? I would probably in a way that I don't want to say requires minimal data collection or data gathering in the field. Probably an approach that would require kind of reflective practice rather than kind of going to the field, given kind of the unique circumstances. What do you think?
Yeah. You see, when the students have this intention, this passion for research, this in itself, I think, is quite promising. So we do have people out there, regardless of all the circumstances, who still want to engage in research, who still wants to write things down. It could be their emotions, their reflection, their whatever, and this is in itself provides the ground for future researchers. So we need that kind of critical and reflective thinkers among our students who will be then, of course, developing these ideas into research later, research papers or research projects later. I would suggest we talked about reflective writing. If you can, start with reflective kind of writing and put it down, organize your writing, format it in a way that is matches the requirements of a journal, then you can find a journal that will publish your reflection. All right. Not every single piece of research involves data collection. If it's really hard to go out and meet people, then you can use the social media platforms to connect with people to gather data, or you can write down your own reflection, develop your argument, and then that's it. That's a paper. There are papers, journals, sorry, which reflect, do accept this kind of writing as well, like the what is it, the brief encounters we talked about last time. They do accept this kind of, and there are also other journals as well. So basically, research does not always involve data collection. You can use existing data and do meta-analysis, secondary data. You can synthesize findings from other papers and then develop your own argument. You can argue, for example, that learning a language, for example, in Gaza, in the certain this circumstances, can be challenging, but we can still do it if you like do this and that based on your understanding of the context. So you develop your own argument in one way or another, put it down, and make sure it's convincing enough, support it with existing data, research findings, and you can develop a research paper. So what I mean, we try to make strike a balance between the requirements of journals and the current conditions that we live now in Gaza. All right, we don't want to say, okay, now because of the situations you are not in a position to write papers. No, you can still write papers, and I think these the emotions and the feelings that people are full of nowadays present a very rich context for research, for reflection. So you have a lot to reflect on. You have a lot to write about, actually. You have passed through, tragic situations and times where you can reflect on and write down. You can write it down and then find someone to help you shaping it into a research paper, and then it will be published eventually. I'm sure it can find its way to publications. So, given the current situations, the difficulties of like going out, doing data collection, you have other alternatives. Okay, you can use social media platforms to contact people and to get data. If you cannot go yourself physically, you can connect with people remotely, as we are doing now, like on Zoom or Google Meets or whatever. On WhatsApp also, you can also do WhatsApp. Recently, I met someone like in a conference here in the UK, and we chatted about new methods of data collection and research. And we come up with some, can be weird way of data collection. Have you heard of data collection while fishing, for example? Like someone like doing data collection while fishing. So you know someone, a group of people who pass through a certain experience. You're not gonna go interview them, in their own house or somewhere like in a situation where it's very formal. No, you go out to the field. They like fishing, for example. So while they are relaxed, while they can have a clear mind while fishing, you start talking to them and start doing your data collection. It's an innovative way of doing it, research. So we don't want to look at research as very formal, highly structured. It has to be like interviews in a certain place. No, you can just go out and do it in the natural, in its natural setting. So data collection in the museum, for example. We mentioned like a data collection while fishing. And data collection in natural settings, okay, natural setting where people, for example, sell and buy, down the markets, okay, and so on, so on, so on. So whatever possible, you can still do it. You can still do it. Either go for empirical, okay, by collecting data, but not physically going to that. But you can use social media, you can use technology nowadays to connect with people and get their data, or you do it to, as we mentioned, the kind of research and papers theoretical, where you write your own reflections, make an argument, format it according to the journal requirements, and send it off the journal for publication.
Wow, very interesting. I like the idea of collecting data while people fishing because they are relaxed and yeah, interesting. That's unique and novel approach, I assume. Dr. Hashil, what if a student sends a paper to a journal or a research? If a researcher or a student sends a paper to a journal and they get decline or a rejection, should they feel down and quit? Or what is your advice?
Don't be surprised that last week I received a desk rejection from a journal. I myself, we have a research paper together with another professor from university in Oman, and we received desk rejection. So that the two types of rejections: desk rejection or reviewer rejection. If you receive a rejection, it's not the end of the world. I see, I'm still here. I'm still happy with it. No problem. I contacted the journal, said, okay, and can you give me hints why the papers? He said it's because of the scope of our journal. This kind of papers will, are not kind of papers we accept. So I wish you all the best for your own future endeavors. And so, fine, it's okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm sending it to another journal. There are many journals out there. Okay. So don't feel down, don't feel bad about yourself. You just need to be very clear about the focus of the journal. And if you got rejection from the first journal, it's not the end of the world. You still have to, you have other journals who will welcome your contribution. I'm sure. No worries at all. So don't give up. Don't give up. And so here is an example of like well, I'm not going to say like a established researcher, but we do have like professors who got rejection. I know a number of them. I attended their webinars, and they said that they got rejection. They are professors that still got rejections.
That's normal, yeah.
No problem.
That's normal. It's part of the field. It's part of the field that you get rejection. And
just keep trying.
Yeah, that's right. Never lose determination and never give up. And also view it as a chance of receiving feedback. Because whenever you're rejected, you receive feedback, why it is rejected. So you build upon that feedback, improve it, and perhaps you send it to another journal, but never kind of quit or feel down that, oh, exactly. I got rejected because I'm bad.
Exactly, I agree. And we have just talked about reflective thinking. So engage in reflective thinking. Okay, why did it happen? Why I was rejected? What was wrong with my paper, the format of the paper, or the focus or methodology, or the data analysis, whatever, and then see how I can improve it. So I got it published elsewhere. So again, you engage in this kind of reflective thinking as well. Okay, we because if how many students have we got left? Because I want to go over a couple of papers. One is empirical, one is theoretical. So we just only talk theoretically, but we also want to show them some practical papers.
Sure. I assume the students have issues with it because they are in and out for multiple times, which is obvious that they have issues.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Okay. What I can do now is to see if I can stop sharing this one. Okay. Right. Okay. Can you still see the presentation?
Yep. That's the tip slide.
Okay. I need to stop sharing this one. So, okay. Let me just stop sharing it so we can share another one. Okay. Okay. If we get to this paper here, and this is a theoretical paper as I published in the Arab World English Journal back in 2011. And this is considered like a theoretical paper. Share, and here we go. Okay. Now, as you can see in front of you, that this is a paper was published 2011 in Arab World English Journal, and the title is, can you zoom it in? Okay, from spoon feeding to self-feeding, helping learners take control of their own learning. And what I'm proposing here is, again, learn autonomy. I did not collect data here. All what I did is that I made use of my literature review. I did this while I was preparing my thesis on learner autonomy, my PhD thesis. And I thought that I've collected quite good amount of studies, a number of studies, good data actually on learner autonomy, and said, okay, why don't I put together a theoretical paper, a position paper, and publish it? And so I put together everything I have read about learner autonomy and formatted my paper, had an argument, okay, put it in a title, an abstract, and then I sent it to the journal. It was published. So as you can see, we've got a title, an abstract, keywords, and then the rest of the paper. We have introduction, okay, and then we have all these subtitles, as you can see, defining the autonomous and responsible learner, and then these are all the criteria and the specific differences between the dependent and independent learner. It's all from previous research. Teaching and learning situation in the Omani educational institutions. And down here we have merits and benefits of learner autonomy. Again, it's all based on my literature review on learner autonomy. Role of the teacher in adapting learner autonomy. And down here we have this diagram from Sinclair, Barbara Sinclair, stages of metacognitive awareness. Another diagram, and so on. So you see what I'm doing is I'm synthesizing information from different sources on learner autonomy and making my position, making my argument. So what I'm arguing here in this paper is that adopting the learner autonomy approach can help learners improve their learner English proficiency. See, challenges here in adopting learner autonomy by learners in Oman, by teachers in Oman. And we got down to this section here on future directions in applying learner autonomy. So I got my argument here. Okay, and then the conclusion and the references. See, you did not see a methodology section, did you? Did you see data analysis section? No. Did you see research design section? No. So it's just the discussions of the previous research. Let me take you back to the abstract. As you can see, recent research findings confirm that learning becomes more effective when learners are in control of their own learning and are aware of the learning process and themselves and as learners. Learner autonomy has thus become a prominent area of research in the last 3 decades. This paper therefore argues for an autonomy-based approach to teaching and learning in Oman. So as you can see, this sentence here okay, says it all. I highlight it here. So as you can see, you begin with the introductory sentences, then put your argument, and then the purpose of the paper. So this paper proposes a framework for a gradual handover of some of the roles traditionally held by teachers to the students, emphasizing the role of the teacher in developing or the students helping the students feed themselves and minimizing their over-reliance on the teacher. So I'll put it in a different color here. So as you can see, then we have those two sections of the abstract. So one is setting out, the one in blue setting up the purpose of the paper, the one in yellow presenting the argument of the paper. So this is an example of a theoretical paper, position paper if you like. It's not empirical, we call it non-empirical paper because it does not involve data collection. So just to be practical with things, this is an example of a theoretical paper. Okay, if we're gonna stop sharing.
And this is interesting, Dr. Hashil, because I think in such kind of research, you just need your laptop, internet connection, and be able to write and synthesize information from different sources. You don't need to go to the field. And this is suitable for students who are experiencing that current situation in Gaza. Probably it can be a starting point.
That's it, exactly. And just remember that I published this while I was preparing for my thesis, at that early age of my PhD degree. And then let me show you also the other one. Where do we have time? Sorry.
Yes, sure.
We got this another paper here now when the focus will be on. Okay, here you go. This is empirical because it involved data collection. And again, this is another paper. It was published as a book chapter, to be honest, as a book chapter. And let me. Okay. It should be on your screen now. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's
okay. If we got students, I want one of them, like, by reading the title of the paper, to tell us the kind of paper in terms of design or in terms of type of paper that we discussed. It says students' perceptions of the 4D feedback methods in EFL writing class, Nazanin and Hashil. As I said, this was published by Springer as a book chapter. Do we still have any of the students? So far we discussed different types of research and different types of research papers. So by looking at the title and perhaps the abstract, can you link it to one of the research papers we talked about? What type of paper this might be? Is it theoretical? Is it empirical? Is it narrative? Is it position paper? Okay, all right. So as you can see, this is another paper. We're gonna go over the paper very quickly, and then you can see the different sections of the paper. So you can then, this hopefully will help you categorize it according to the types and we discussed. So the title says Students' Perception of the 4D Feedback Method in EFL Writing Class. So basically what we did is that we got a group of students, our own students, we introduced this 4D method for giving feedback on their writing. And then we sat with them in as a group. We discussed their reaction and their perceptions of this new method we are using in the classroom. Okay, so as you can see, this is an introduction, got contextual background about teaching languages in Oman. Here we have a literature review, and we got all these subsections under literature review, languaging, feedback. Okay, and scroll down to get to the different sections, other sections of the paper. So here we have research design, we have the research questions. Okay, and we have this diagram that describes what we did and the stages of the 4D feedback method that we use with our students. Okay, here we have research method, the methodology, the participants. Those are the participants. As you can see, of course, those are not real names, but we use pseudonyms, of course. As you can see, the procedure of the study and ethical considerations, of course, must be there, limitations of the study. And then here is the findings. As you can see, I highlighted this when I was going over this with my own students, showing them the difference between the non-empirical and empirical papers. As you can see here, we got the students' reactions. We got quotations from the student interviews. We had the group discussion, actually, not an interview, group discussion, reflective group discussions. We use this methodology with them to get the students' data. So these are all data from the students, from the group of students we had, and of course together with discussions. This is the summary and future directions, and here down we have the references. So how is this paper different from the one I showed you earlier on learner autonomy? When you think of the difference, you can easily understand the difference between papers and the difference between the scope of papers and also the methodological approach. So as you can see here that we have a methodology section, we have data collection, we have description of the sample. Okay, so this is empirical paper because it involves data collection. But the previous one, I did not I did not collect data from the field. Like I didn't meet with students or teachers or parents or whatever. I did not have that empirical part of the research. But this one I did. So I did have a group of students. I met them together with my co-researcher here, Nazanin. We did all this together, and we had this paper and we published it. So this is an example of an empirical paper. That one, the previous one on learner autonomy, is an example of non-empirical or position paper, or you can call it theoretical paper. So what I mean, so you can start off with something you can do, you can manage, you can control, and then you can proceed to other types of empirical papers which involve data collection. So as students, you're still in your final year or at the BA level, you can still work on research, you can still engage with research by writing your own feelings, your reflection on what's going on around you, or you can engage in simple data collection, either quantitative or qualitative, depending on your purpose, as we said, depending on what is it you want to do or find out, depending on the kind of questions you have. And then you can, get your data together, analyze your data, interpret the data, compare your data with already existing data, discuss your results, in relation to other studies, write a conclusion, but make sure you have a very clear argument, and make sure you have clear data from the field that supports your argument, and then draw conclusions. Okay, formatted according to the journal formatting requirements, and you send it off to the journal. All right, you start searching or hunting for journals after you have decided on the focus of your paper and the kind of paper. Is it language learning paper? Is it sociology? Is it in medicine? Is it in law? And then of course you will be looking at, depending on your major. If you are, of course, in language learning or education in general, of course, then you will be heading towards journals in education. If you go very specific to English language learning or English language teaching, there are also journals that publish papers on English language learning, and there are also papers that publish on English language teaching, okay, depending on the topic. All right. So these are two examples. I have many papers, but we don't have much time to. I thought that the two types of papers that you can make use of. So you should have now a good sense of types of papers and how we can write them, depending on, as we said, the purpose. What is it you want to find out? What is it you want to do? Okay.
I agree, and I think this is a really good solid foundation that students in this stage really need. To be honest with you, I admit that our teaching system, our education system, mainly in Palestine, I don't want to overgeneralize, does not properly prepare students for conducting research. Because as Dr. Hashil was talking about spoon feeding, unfortunately, rote learning and spoon feeding is commonly followed in schools. And of course, this kind of influences the mindset of students and how they perceive at least conducting research at a university level. So this is really a good foundation for those who aim to improve their understanding of research and start conducting research. Dr. Yahya had a question. I understand we have a session particularly for that topic, which is how students should choose the topic for their research projects. We will have a specific webinar on that particular title of choosing a topic, but if you want to briefly comment on that, Dr. Hashil, please.
Yeah. So thank you, Ahmed. As you said, that we're going to have another session on how you could, because this is a common question. We usually receive this kind of questions on, I want to do, research, but I don't know how to begin, where to begin, what topics shall I choose? Can you suggest some topics for me? And as we're going to see later in that session, usually topics usually comes from within ourselves, from our own context. The reason why we started off this series of workshops by reflective thinking, sorry, that the reason is that because we want the students to engage in this kind of thinking and to learn how to think critically and reflectively. So because that forms the basis for research and research topics. If you can think critically, if you can think reflectively, reflect on the situation around you, then that should be the starting point of getting a topic for your research. Okay, if you look around, you realize that you are surrounded with lots of ideas, lots of topics that worth exploring. We have challenges, we have problems, we also have opportunities. And I want to make it clear to our dear students that sometimes when they hear the word research, they always think of problems. No, You can work on research on something that really worked very well. If you are like a teacher and you use a methodology of what you think that it really worked, you want to find out why it worked. All right, and you want to find out how you could improve this idea later on in the future by asking the students how they reacted to it, what aspect of this methodology they really liked, what engaged them in this class, and so on. So don't think of research as always, deals with problems. It equally also deals with opportunities and successes. Okay, we have success stories, for example, and we want to write about it. For example, all these great initiatives now Dr. Ahmed and others are engaged in Gaza. This is, it's a great thing. Why don't we write it down about it? Why don't we tell others about what those people are, the great things that they are doing? So we can, write either theoretical paper on it or an empirical paper where I engage Dr. Ahmed, for example, Dr. Yahya, and those who are working in humanitarian field. I get their perceptions and perspectives on their kind of work they are doing, kind of environment they are working in, with all the challenges there, and gather data in this way from those great people there, the heroes, and write it down. It will be documentation of their everyday experience, okay, with teaching, with reviving education in Gaza, trying to get the education going on regardless of all the hardship there. This is a great examples. Why don't we just write about them? Why don't we tell the world about all these examples? So you can engage in this kind of research. So what I want to say is that if you engage in reflective and critical thinking with the environment around you, you can have lots of ideas for research, either theoretical or empirical.
Thanks, Dr. Hashil. And I think what we call this research immediacy or relevance. It is immediately relevant what is going on to your environment, to your context. My gosh, did you hear the explosion?
Oh my God.
Having mentioned our teaching system and critical thinking, and this is a comment by Bisan, having mentioned our teaching system and critical thinking skills, how to ensure an analytical paper does not just summarize, but truly add or offer new insight? It's a good question.
Yeah. This is something we also mentioned that when you want to engage in research, make sure you have a specific point to focus on, and make sure you go beyond just describing what's going on, but you are analyzing it, you are researching it, and then you compare your findings with the findings that already exist, so you can then develop some new insight from those kind of experiences. It has to be it has to contain a level of criticality, and you need to make sure that you present something new. So that contribution must be there in one way or another, of course, depending on your level. But the two things that needs to be there: evidence of criticality and evidence of contribution. The two things that need to be there in order for your paper to qualify as enriching knowledge or merit the publication. So make sure you have evidence of criticality. Okay, there's a level of criticality there. It's not just the description, but also analytical thinking is there. Evidence of rigor is there, following methodological procedures and so on. And at the end of the day, there must be something new that you are adding to it. It's a value, added value to the paper. So those two things that you need to have in your paper to merit the publication: evidence of criticality and evidence of contribution. That needs to be there. Because it's going to be published and people will need to read something new, new insights, new perspectives, and new synthesis of ideas put it in one way or another that presents something really new that is worth reading.
That's right, Dr. Hashil. That's why sometimes we receive manuscripts to review for journals. We keep always asking, so what? So what? If the article doesn't answer, so what? Or doesn't bring something new, we either send it back to the journal and say it's rejected, unfortunately, or it needs kind of major revisions kind of to answer the so what question. So that relates to kind of contribution. You're right.
To share with you an incident, Dr. Ahmed and others, when I first came here to the UK for my sabbatical, I've already conducted 5 reviews for journals and 2 promotion reviews for a university, academic professor. And I rejected both promotion applications. And 3 of the 5 papers that I received for review. That makes me quite, maybe journals will think I'm no longer sending papers to me because they keep rejecting all these things. But I would really read every single line and comment and make all those, including language issues as well. So I would comment on methodology, on language and style, on because I'm that much find myself that much into methodology. And the first thing I look at is the methodology and how it relates to the objectives of the paper. Sometimes people just do superficial statistical analysis, quasi-experimental kind of research, where it doesn't really help us answer the research questions. And so I thought the methodology does not help us answer the questions. And it's so superficial. Mainly quantitative, using mono method, and descriptive statistics, drawing conclusions. That's it. And so there's nothing really tangible and the argument is not that critical. It's not that strong, and it's so I would comment on major revisions, for example, in that case. Yeah. So yeah, we need to have that, as I mentioned, the 2 things, the evidence of criticality and evidence of contribution.
That's right. But of course, we are not trying to scare you guys. If you want to contribute, just feel free to write and try. This is how we all started writing research and trying, attempting, and sending and receiving feedback and building upon feedback that we receive, and that's how we all improve. We start step by step, and that's how we improve. Oh look, it's really interesting to talk about research papers and types of research papers, but of course we are aware of time constraints. I understand students are struggling with finding power supply for devices, internet. So that's why let's make it a day and wrap up here. I'd like to thank George and Mili for again making it and being part of this initiative and great effort. And of course, my thanks are extended to Dr. Hashil, who has offered to conduct these sessions and help us and our students and staff in the department with research endeavors. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for our students for making it. And hopefully we'll see you soon in the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.